Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Olivia and this is my channel where I love to talk about all things nail polish. Today's video is going to be a let's chat video where I'm gonna go over like the second part of nail polish destashing. There was a 101 video that I posted about a week and a half ago, something like that. If you haven't seen that one, I'll put a link in the description so you can check that one out too. And as I was filming that video that went over the steps of step one, here's what I recommend to do for a destash, then do step 2 and 3. Those were like really sequential in terms of like what the actual process is for doing a destash. But then during that video, I said that there's even more pieces of advice that I had that would be far too much to include in a single video. And I asked if any of you would be interested in seeing a 201. Let me know in the comments, and y'all did. So I spent some time doing another brain dump and thinking, what are the other pieces of advice that I would give to anyone who's wanting to do a destash? And then from there, I rearranged it in an order that makes some kind of logical sense. So the way that I'm going to structure this video is, and also just like before, if you see me looking down, it's because I've got my iPad here with all my notes. The first part of this video will cover advice that I have for sellers. The second part covers advice that I have for buyers. And then there's the third part that's just advice that can apply for anyone who is participating in a destash, whether you're selling and or buying. Okay, so with this being a chatty video, I encourage you to get cozy, get some nice hot cocoa or beverage of choice, and let's get into it. First though, I do have to share like my nails. If you are not into gore, I would say kind of look away before I do a close-up here, but I just had to show my nails that I just did. So my husband and I are seeing Kill Bill tonight in theaters. They're doing a combination of like the 1 and 2 back to back. So we're going to the movie tonight. We're going to be in the theater tonight for like 4.5, probably 5 hours when you factor in trailers before that. And so I, of course, had to be on theme with my nails, and I did some research about nail artists who have also done Kill Bill nails, and I'll put a link in the description to the person whose nails I was inspired by. But yeah, check it out. Kill Bill. It's gonna be awesome. But the thing is, at first we were, I just have to say this before I get into this. Sorry, I'm so rambly right now. This is why I put timestamps in so that if you want to skip this, you can. We were originally planning to just go to like eat something light here at home and then get popcorn there as needed. But then I was just talking with him and he's like, why don't we go out to a restaurant beforehand? I'm like, yeah, sure, cool. Which I'm always down for Olive Garden. I love breadsticks, but y'all, I'm gonna be eating breadsticks with these nails. I'm gonna be like reaching for the breadsticks. And anyway, you know what? I'm just gonna own it because these nails are cute, and I will let y'all know how that goes. Okay, so let's get into it. So first, let's start with the advice that I have for sellers. I decided to put this first because I felt that with the 101 video being addressed to sellers from that perspective, I figured let me continue with that first. And so the first piece of advice that I have is, when you are doing a nail polish destash and you're doing a transaction with someone who has expressed interest in buying your polish, stick to your preferred payment method. In the first video, I mentioned that mine is PayPal goods and services because of the seller protection that it provides. And my advice here is, when you are making your destash post, you're going to say in there what your payment method or methods are. And let's say you have specified that you are only accepting PayPal goods and services. But then someone says, okay, I'm gonna buy this and this polish. So you start doing a private message with them. And then they're like, oh, so can we do Zelle, or can we do Venmo? Can we do something else? I mean, it is up to you, but I personally choose to stick with what I have said that I am going to use for my payment method. Part of it for me is just I like keeping all of that organized in one central place, but also I'm not personally familiar with the seller protection policies of other platforms like Zelle, Venmo, Cash App, and so on. If you are, and if that's something that you're comfortable with, feel free to go for it, but just know that this can be something to look out for. Have the confidence to stick to whatever it is that you said that you are going to accept. Next, only ship to the address that's listed in someone's PayPal account. So the way it works would be, I'm gonna go back to my example of a buyer named Jane. I am selling some polishes, and then Jane says she wants to buy some of those polishes from me. So Jane and I start messaging. I get Jane's PayPal email address and send her the payment request. And then after Jane does that payment, I, as the seller, will be able to go into my PayPal account and see for that transaction what Jane's mailing address is. And that would be the mailing address that I use with putting into Pirate Ship, in my case, for creating a mailing label. The reason you want to do this and only use that address that is in there, and I looked this up, and I'll put like a screenshot of this and also a link to this page in the video description. So when I was referring to this seller protection that PayPal offers, that seller protection is voided if you ship your package to an address that does not match the address that is on the buyer's account. So, for example, let's say after Jane has paid me and after I see what her address is, like 123 Main Street in whatever city and state, if Jane sends me a follow-up message and is like, oh, by the way, I want to use a different mailing address, so can you update it? Or no, not update it. Jane might say, can you mail my package to this other one instead? If that happens, and I will say, it could be the case that somebody just may not have used their PayPal account in a while, and maybe they moved and maybe they forgot to update it. That happens. If that is the case, and if someone, legitimately has forgotten to update their address, the way I would recommend going about handling that as the seller would be to cancel or refund that transaction that occurred that has Jane's address is 123 Main Street, and then let Jane know, okay, so I've refunded your money to you. And so now what you should go do is update your address in your PayPal account, Jane, and let me know once you're ready and good to go, and I'll send you another payment request so that we can do this again with the new address that you've put in. I know it sounds like a lot. I know it sounds kind of convoluted in some ways, and especially when you're in the middle of handling potentially 5-6 different conversations and transactions at a time, you might not want to have to pause and do that additional step to be like, oh goodness, I thought we were moving forward with this, and now I've got to give her a refund and do an extra step. But y'all, I just promise, please make sure to, if you have not already done so, take a look over that link that I put in the description to PayPal seller protection, and just remind yourself that if this ever were to occur, only ship to the address that is on that person's transaction so that you can ensure that your seller protection remains in place. Next, this is a very specific thing, but it's something that came up recently in one of the Facebook groups that I'm in, so I thought, let me put this in here. If you, as a seller, have added thinner to one or more of your nail polishes, this is something that needs to be disclosed in your listing. Recently saw this in a Facebook group, and it was, I forget the exact details, so don't quote me on this, y'all, but I think it was a case where the seller had put thinner in a polish and had not disclosed that in her listing. She sold the polish, mailed the polish. The buyer saw that thinner had been added and was upset about this and was wanting a refund. And the seller came to the group, I think, expecting most people there to side with her, the seller. But she was quite surprised when pretty much everyone was like, no, if you've put thinner in a polish, that is something that you need to disclose. Now, I would say for myself, just personally speaking, I would never really even get to the point where I need to add thinner into a polish, because the way that I kind of handle it with the polishes that I consider destashing is like, let's say I get an order, and like if one of my Black Friday orders comes in, then what I will do is have those polishes in like my to be tried pile, and then I will at some point say, okay, let me try this one out. I haven't tried this yet. Let's do that. And then I'll like paint it on a finger, see if I like it or not. And if I like it, I will, continue with it. It's like it passes, I'm keeping it. I've gotten to the point where I personally can tell pretty early on if a polish that I receive is one that's going to be a yes or a no for me. And so because of that, if it's a no, I've only like at most used it for like a full manicure, like if I really wanted to get a sense of if I like it or not. But for the most part, for me, it's just like one finger, and I'm like, that's going to be a no for me. So it goes to the destash pile. And because of that, I never would have really needed to have held on to that polish for the amount of time or used it to the extent to which it would have needed thinner. But let's say if for whatever reason there is a polish that I've had for a while, that I've been using it for a bit, maybe it does have a significant fill line, but that is something that I'm choosing to note in the listing. I would, you need to tell people if you put thinner in it, because it's, this might not be the best analogy, but I'm going to go for it. It's like seasoning, in the sense that like what may be considered an acceptable level of like salt. What am I talking about? Well, I was just talking about Salt Bae in another video. I'm so sorry. What may be an acceptable level of salt for you might not be the case for somebody else. Like, I know some people only choose to put like literally 3 drops of polish at a time in their thinner, or 3 switch. They only put like 3 drops of thinner at a time in a polish, because that's the level at which they go about thinning, depending on the polish, of course. But for other people, they might be, like me, I tend to be a little bit more heavy-handed because I know which polishes need that extra oomph to like really thin it out. But what I'm saying is, that is something where, if you're newer to destashing, you might not have even realized that was something that was considered a best practice and expectation to do. But I just encourage all of you, if you are destashing polishes that you've had around for a while, that have become a little bit thick, I feel that it would be far better for you to list it as it is. And if you want to mention like, hey, like here's the picture of it, but from this picture you might not be able to tell, but I would recommend putting some thinner in here, but I have not put thinner in it myself. Figure out how you want to do it, but just make sure that is something that you disclose. Okay, and the last piece of advice or thing that I want to bring up for sellers is to decide whether or not that you want to sell mystery bags. Ooh. Sorry, that was supposed to be like a mystery sound effect. If you're unfamiliar with the concept of selling mystery bags of nail polish, this is where, as opposed to you listing the exact individual polishes that you are selling, you might just post a picture of, often it's like a black and white picture, even to like really add to the mystery. You might just post a black and white picture of a pile of nail polishes and say, hey, I'm selling mystery bags. You can get X number of polishes for Y dollars, and so on. And it's up to you, of course, to decide how many polishes are you including in the mystery bag and at what price. And also keep in mind the shipping cost for that. As a best practice, I would say if you're offering mystery bags, whatever price you give for that, it should include shipping there. Like that should be part of your total price. Because like it's just, I think the thing about mystery bags is that it's like a simplified version of polish shopping anyway. So like you want to get people in and interested in what you're offering. So like but then you don't want it to be like, oh, okay, I'm interested in this. Oh, but now I gotta pay shipping too. So, just include the cost of shipping already in whatever price that you set. Now, a couple of benefits of selling mystery bags. One thing is that it really does make it easier to destash multiple polishes at once. Like you can, however many you set per bag, like that could be an excellent way to get those out in bulk. It's also good because it removes the need for you to individually photograph and take inventory of all the polishes that you're selling. So perhaps you're someone who you realize you've got a huge pile of polishes that you need to sell, and you would like to be able to get some money from selling them sooner than later, but you also don't necessarily have the time to do the individual listing and pricing right away. So that could be a benefit of doing mystery bags. However, a couple drawbacks. One is that you'll most likely need to sell your polishes at a lower price in order to attract interested buyers. And I tend to keep a lookout at postings that come through my Facebook feed. And even if I'm not actively looking for polishes, I'm just like, I'm nosy, so I'm just looking. So I'm nosy and I own it. So yeah. So I saw a post recently where someone was selling a bag of, I believe it was 7 mystery polishes for $40 that included shipping. And that I think was a pretty good deal. And some people were jumping on that. Like there was activity, people were interested. You break that down. If we just say, like, for example, 7 times 5 is 35. So that might be $5 per polish, plus $5 for shipping. But shipping for 7 polishes would be a little bit more than that. So it doesn't really work out. But y'all see what I'm getting at, right? Like it might come down to like $5 or $6 per polish. Or somewhere in that range in the mystery bag context, as opposed to if you are doing an individual listing for those polishes, you might have listed them at something like 10 or 12 individually. So that is one of the drawbacks. And I think that when it comes to mystery polishes, some people would, they are interested, but it all depends. Other people are just like, nah, if I'm buying something, I want to know what I'm getting. I also want to mention that the 7 polishes for $40, those were all indie polishes. So if you're trying to destash mainstream polishes, you're probably going to have to set that price even lower. I personally have not had much, if any, success with destashing mainstream polishes. I do have if I have mainstream polishes that I know that I'm not going to use, I have like a big bag of them over on the side that I at some point will be taking to a local women's shelter. Obviously, first you want to call ahead and make sure that the shelter is able and willing to accept nail polish, but that could be a good way to get the polishes to someone and who would enjoy and appreciate the ones that you know that you don't need. Another drawback to selling mystery bags is that some buyers might not choose to buy the mystery bag if you as a seller are not willing to take preferences into consideration. So things like, let's just go back to that example of 7 polishes for $40. Some people who are buying might ask, hey, can I give you my preferences for my preferred brands, my preferred colors, my preferred finishes, or like, here's the ones that I do want, here's the ones that I know I don't want. And I have seen where some sellers will be like, yeah, I can't make any promises, but I can absolutely take that into consideration. I think that when a seller does that, that does potentially make it more likely that you will attract some interested buyers. But then, if you are willing to do that, just know that that will most likely add on some additional time to that process for you as a seller. So like, if you're drawn to selling your polishes through mystery bags for the ease of use and the time savings, but then you decide to take preferences into account, then suddenly you are having to do a little bit more inventory management as opposed to just being like, here's 7, here you go, and so on. So now let's transition over to some advice that I have for nail polish buyers when you're looking through destashes. One thing in particular, like as I was planning this out, very first thing that came to mind was photos, because photos can lie. They really can. I would say, okay, first point about this. If a seller has only included bottle photos that have come from the maker or other swatchers, that's definitely something to be wary of. Like if somebody is saying, for example, oh, here's this polish from Bee's Knees, and they're listing it as in the text of their post, but then the photo of it is like straight from the Bee's Knees lacquer website, or it's like clearly from another swatcher and not this person, showing the actual bottle that they themselves possess. That's a red flag. Now, it could be the case that the poster they might be new to destashing, and they might just think it's a lot easier for them to pull photos from the internet that already look good. But the thing is, I have seen it where there are times people will post photos that a combination of a picture that they have taken themselves, and then also share a picture of a swatch of it so that people can see what that polish looks like on the nails. And I think that's okay to do as long as it's clear which one is your photo as the seller and which one is taken from another swatcher. But if you don't see photos that look like they've been taken by someone who's doing a destash, be cautious. The other thing, and this is something that this is one of my pet peeves when it comes to destash listings. This is something to look out for, is if the bottle photos have been taken from above. And so sometimes what I see sellers will do is that they will, to save time, they will arrange all of the polishes that they're selling like on the floor, on their bed, or something like that, and then they will take a picture of that from above and say, okay, refer to these photos to see what I'm selling. The problem here is, before I get to the problem, what they also will do is include a second perspective that shows the bottom of the bottle so that you can see the label. So they'll show from above, and then they'll have the label. Okay, the problem here is that when that happens, you as the buyer, the prospective buyer, you can't see the fill line. And some people can lie, y'all. People can lie. And to demonstrate what I mean by this, I decided to have some fun earlier today, and I went through my collection and tried to see which of my polishes I could best demonstrate this with. So and I'm going to be inserting some photos to show y'all what I'm talking about. So I decided to use for this example a bottle of Mooncat's Maelstrom, which, oh my God, teal. I love it. Love it. And I looked at that bottle and thought, okay, now if this bottle, let me think, how do I want to do this? Okay. Let's imagine, because I have not yet shown you my bottle of Maelstrom. Now, I know that in this video, we're in the context of where you all are in the mindset of thinking about ways that buyers can potentially, or I'm sorry, that sellers can potentially scam you with photos. So you're going to be on high alert and hyper focus on the picture that I'm going to put in here. But what I'd like you to do is just put yourself in the mindset of think about how it is when you are scrolling through these Facebook groups and these Reddit groups that are focused on nail polish swaps and sales. You're just kind of going through them pretty quickly, right? You're looking through and you're just kind of glazing over and seeing what's there. And so the amount of time that you would spend on one of those pictures, that's what I want you to do. Okay, so here we go. Here is my example of if I were listing this bottle of Maelstrom, and here it is. Okay, so again, I know you're also probably still looking at it from the lens of what's the deal here? What's Olivia getting at? I really want you to think for a minute. If you were just glancing through, how full do you think that bottle would be? Okay, and okay, so now is where I will tell you that I was very intentional about how I kind of framed that, because I took that picture and framed it in a way where you can't really see much about like the space around it or how it's like positioned or anything like that. That bottle, and this also gets into another thing that some people can do if they're trying to disguise the fill lines in these bottles. What I did, I actually took it a step further and was even sketchier about this. I shook my bottle of Maelstrom up real good before I laid it down flat and took that picture. So now here that everything has settled, and actually I took this picture first. Here's a picture of what that bottle actually looks like when it's just sitting up, right? So, and I can actually grab it right now. Hold up. Okay, so let's take another look. I mean, you can see that fill line there. That's what this bottle really looks like. And I wanted to really drive this point home, that for you as a prospective polish seller, or I'm sorry, I keep saying seller, a prospective polish buyer, please do not settle for photos that have been taken from above. If you see a polish that is listed that way and you're interested in it, I know it can be tempting to want to claim it, to want to buy it, and make sure that nobody else can get it, especially if it's been on your list and search for the longest time. But I promise you, please make sure to ask that seller for a picture of that bottle standing up, and be on the lookout for things like, just, kind of ask yourself, does it look like that this bottle has just been shaken up? Like, is the polish evenly coating the inside of the bottle? Like, does it seem like something's being hidden? If you are in doubt, phone a friend, ask a friend, like, hey, does something seem off about this photo to you? But especially if you're in doubt, I think you're far better to pass on it and wait for something else to come around. Okay. Next piece of advice for buyers. So just like I said for sellers, make sure that you stick to your preferred payment method. Now, let's say you are looking at a polish listing and that seller has said that they are accepting PayPal goods and services, and you as the buyer, like, yep, PayPal goods and services is also what I want to do. So this seems good. So you start messaging the seller, and the seller might say to you, you know what? I know I put PayPal in the listing, but my PayPal just hasn't been working. So can we do, sorry, I keep going to like Zelle, Venmo, Cash App, Pigeon Carrier, Carrier Pigeon, whatever. If they say that, yeah, that's a no. You as the buyer, you also have the right to stick to whatever service you have set that you are comfortable with, if that is what is listed by the seller. This again gets to seller protection, and it also just, I don't know, it just feels a little off to me if someone knows that their PayPal isn't working, but they still put in the listing anyway, because maybe they know that a lot of people are using PayPal and they see that as legitimate. But then they get into the conversations and it's like, oh, let's do something else. And that's not necessarily going to have that seller protection. Another thing on the note of talking about PayPal, I mentioned in the first video, the 101 video, that when you as a seller use PayPal goods and services for a transaction, a payment transaction, there will be a small fee that PayPal takes out of that as part of the covering that protection that you get. And I gave the example at that time. I think I mentioned something like, I recently had a $19 transaction, a $19 payment request that I sent to the buyer, and then the buyer pays that $19. And so let me emphasize, the buyer pays $19. And then I, as the seller, when I get the email from PayPal that lets me know that they have made that payment, I see that out of that $19, PayPal has taken something like, it's usually really small, like 50 cents or something. It'll say in the receipt, PayPal has taken 50 cents, and then I am given $18.50 remaining as the part that I am getting from that transaction. And, that is part of how sellers need to price their polishes. Knowing that PayPal does take a small fee for goods and services, sellers need to be factoring this into whatever price they set. So sometimes what can happen, and I've seen stories of this, if it can be a red flag, if a seller asks you to cover that PayPal goods and services fee. So I've seen people talk about this where from the buyer perspective, so they're the buyer and the seller messaged them and, they were ready to do the transaction. They thought everything was good. But then the seller said to them, oh, hey, so I'm gonna send you a separate friends and family payment request so that you can cover that goods and services fee that was taken out. That is not okay, because again, that would make it so that sure, the seller would be getting their full $19 even instead of $18.50, but it's very clear the seller is the one who is responsible for swallowing that fee. That is not on you to the buyer to cover. And if you have a seller who says that to you, run and just be like, nope, I'm good. Thank you for your time, but no way. Okay. So the final section of this here, I've got some advice for everyone. Woo! So there's the first piece of advice for everyone is to join the Indie Polish Buyer Beware group on Facebook. I know, it's another Facebook group, but I promise this one is worth it. This one is where both buyers and sellers can go to share their stories of negative experiences that they've had with certain individuals who have had scammy behavior. Things like if somebody did receive, there was one, I think, where someone had paid the seller. There's a buyer, they had paid the seller, and then, the seller just completely ghosted them. Never sent anything to them in the mail, never sent any other communications. I think there was another one that was similar to that, but the difference was the buyer thought they were being ghosted because they hadn't heard anything back, but then the seller eventually sent and said oh, okay, here's a tracking number, but I think it was a fake tracking number. Just join the group, scroll through, and I think it's also a good place to get some examples of these things. And I also want to thank that group for giving me some of the ideas that I've included in here. There was like a thread in that group on this exact topic. So thank you all. Next piece of advice is to be very cautious when doing nail polish trades or swaps. Now that's a topic we haven't covered yet on here. We've really just been talking about the perspective of buyers and the perspective of sellers. Now there's also a third option that some people do where, let's see, this will probably be best if I come up with some fake names here. So, okay, I'm gonna go with Jane and Bob. Jane has a polish that Bob wants to buy, and Bob has a polish that Jane wants to buy. So this is bad. I'm just like, oh, it's like they found a matching kidney or something. Yeah, it's a match, right? So here, Jane and Bob message each other and they say, hey, let's go ahead and swap these polishes. Now, one way that this could be done would be that they just get each other's mailing addresses, like PayPal, no payment is involved in this option. So Jane sends a message to Bob with her mailing address. Bob sends a message to Jane with his mailing address. And then it is up to the two of them to have enough trust in each other that they will both follow through on what they said they were going to send. In an ideal scenario, Jane is going to follow through on sending the polish to Bob and he'll get his in the mail. And then Bob will follow through on sending the polish to Jane that she wants and she'll get hers in the mail and everyone will be happy. But y'all know that doesn't always happen. What could go wrong is that Jane sends her polish over to Bob and then Bob gets that in the mail. But then Bob decides, you know what? I got the polish I wanted and I'm gonna keep the polish that I already had. And then he blocks Jane and just goes off. And yeah, this is especially concerning or something that you should keep in mind if a polish that you are considering sending to someone as a swap or trade is a very rare, high value polish that a lot of people are looking for. Like, oh goodness, what's an example of one that people always talk about? I think that Mooncat polish from the Powerpuff Girls collection, Forces of Evil, a lot of people have wanted that one. So let's say if the polish that Jane sent to Bob was Forces of Evil, she might have only been okay with sending that to Bob because she knew that Bob was going to send to her a polish that she considered to be on par with her letting go of her Forces of Evil. So that might be what's another one that a lot of people talk about wanting? Let's just say any Great Lakes lacquer polish, for example, but probably something even more rare than that. So I hope y'all understand what I'm getting at here, that is the base scenario of what could happen with a swap and trade. And for that reason, it's considered a best practice in the nail polish destashing community to have some kind of to have PayPal transactions associated with a trade or swap. So the way that this would go better instead of what I laid out before would be, so Jane has Forces of Evil. Bob has, I can think of a better polish than, not saying better than I love Great Lakes lacquer, but I'm like, what is a polish that keeps coming up? Okay. Jane has Forces of Evil and Bob has Bee's Knees lacquer, a lion with a thorn in its paw. Roar. Y'all, it's a Friday afternoon. I'm just being really extra right now. Okay. So they have these two polishes. And so it's going to be up to them in their private transaction or their private communication to set some kind of monetary value for those polishes. And then each of them will send a payment request to the other for the amount of that transaction. So let's say they agree that $50 will be the amount that they are setting for this, including shipping. So $50. Jane is going to send a payment request to Bob for the $50. Bob is going to send the payment request to Jane for $50. They pay each other, right? So they're both even now. And then from those PayPal transactions, that's where they would see each other's addresses and then be able to get the information that they need to send to the other. Also, they do this through goods and services, so they have that seller protection. Now, best case scenario, everything checks out. They get each other's addresses. Jane sends Forces of Evil. Bob sends the lion with the thorn in its paw. I almost want to say paw again. I don't know why I can't just say paw. Okay. And then everything's good. But let's go back to the what if that could go wrong. Jane sends Forces of Evil to Bob, and she's waiting to get the bee's knees polished. And she's waiting and she's waiting. And so now she's upset because she hasn't gotten her polish. Bob has gotten his. And now she feels stuck. But what she can do in that case, because there were payment transactions associated with this, Jane can then go and dispute the transaction with PayPal. The one, let me see, it would be the one where she paid Bob for the bee's knees one. So she would go and dispute the one with her as the buyer, because in this case, she as the buyer did not receive the goods that she paid for. So I know that was a lot to kind of sketch out and talk through, but I really wanted to make sure to include that in this video because you really want to make sure that you're protected with this. I know that we often have very emotional connections to the polishes that we have, and in particular, some of the more rare ones. And it can just be really disheartening when you give up one of yours and you're expecting to get something back and you don't get that. So I guess I would also say, with that being said, you want to make sure that whatever you set that mutual transaction value at is something that you consider to be like what you value that polish to be. I guess the last thing I'll say about that topic is that because of all the messiness that can be involved with that, I personally don't do trades or swaps. I just I'm happy for the people that it works for, and I know some people love it, but I just stick to buying and selling and keeping those as completely separate transactions. Okay, and the last part is, as always, I'm trying to think like, what do I put as like the short version of this? And the best thing I could think of for this was, if you see something, say something. Okay, let me put the iPad down for this and get comfy, because this is a doozy of a story. Okay, so if you see something, say something. Let me explain the reason for this. So the other day, I think it was actually like earlier this week, in the Reddit Lacarista swap group on Reddit, I woke up in the morning and I saw there was a post from someone who, I think the subject line was, "Has anyone else dealt with this scammer?" And then in the post, there was a picture of a box of Christmas lights. And the text of the post said that the poster said that they had bought some mooncat polishes from this person, but instead of getting the polishes in the mail, the seller sent them a box of Christmas lights. And also in the text of that post, the person listed the seller's real name and email address. Okay, so just kind of pause and sit with that for a minute. That's kind of what's going on there. And I want you to pause and think, like, if you were someone who saw that post, like, what would be the first question that you would ask that person and respond? Like, I guarantee what you're probably thinking is exactly what people started asking in that thread, which is, did you open the box? Right? right? Again, this was only the only picture was, it was a picture of a box of Christmas lights, no mention of what was in the box. So y'all, things were moving real quickly. And oh, other thing I'll mention about this before I get to the next part. So also in that in the text of that post, the person, the buyer, mentioned that they had opened a case. Now, there were some comments in in responses later where people were confused. They were like, when the person said they opened a case, they weren't sure if that meant that the poster had opened the case of Christmas lights, but I responded and said, I take it to mean that they opened a case, like a dispute case with PayPal to dispute the transaction. Okay, so then the seller jumps into the thread, and oh, y'all, the seller jumps into the thread and says something like, if you open the box, you would see that the Mooncat polishes are in there. Also, I told y'all I'm nosy earlier, right? So I took screenshots of this because I knew it was going to be deleted, and it was deleted, but I wanted to at least save the pictures because I knew I was going to talk about it in this video. So I'm putting pictures in here. And yeah, so the seller was like, did you even open the box? And then things really started to escalate from there. The seller also made a comment that said that as soon as they had received a message of concern from the buyer regarding the Christmas light box, the seller responded to them and wanted to let them know, oh, hey, it was just like a box I was reusing from Christmas lights just for packaging, but the polishes are in the box. But despite that, the buyer went anyway and opened a dispute case with PayPal and also made a Reddit post about it. And I'm just sitting there thinking like, the buyer had the time to you had the time to make a whole Reddit post and open a dispute with PayPal, and you ain't even opened the box. Really? So then as more comments are coming in and saying to more comments are coming in from other people in the community chiming in, saying to the buyer, open the box. Also, it's not okay that you dox this seller and just put all her information out there. You owe her an apology. And sure enough, the buyer opens the box, and it turns out that the Mooncat polishes are in there. And so I'm going to include a picture of that as well. So that is what the buyer saw when they finally opened the box. So they're like, oh, okay, my bad. And then I think they said they canceled the dispute claim with PayPal, but and they eventually deleted their post, which was good because that was really going to be the only way for them to get the seller's personal information down. They couldn't edit that out of the post because of the limitations of photo-based Reddit posts that I mentioned in my previous video. But at that point, the damage had been done. And in the follow-up comments from the buyer, they just, at least from what I saw, were not at all apologetic to the seller for what they had done. And okay, so that's what happened. And the buyer was then trying to make themselves look like the victim again because of saying that the seller had only put a little bit of packaging in the box. But it's like, packaging, doxing, I mean, they're not on the same level. So here's my take on this personally. I'll just cover the part about the seller's packaging first. For me personally, when I send out polishes, I always bubble wrap them first. Like that is a non-negotiable for me. I know that packages move and bump around a lot in transit, and I, as a seller, want to make sure that I am fulfilling my responsibility to do whatever I can to get those polishes as cushioned as possible for them to make it safely to the to the buyer. If any of y'all who are watching this have happened to purchase from me, first of all, thank you. Also, you know what I'm saying about all the bubble wrap that I include. And so that's like the bare minimum for me. But then the other thing that's a little iffy with this is that knowing that there is a well-documented history in the nail polish community about issues with Mooncat bottles breaking, and even just not even just in transit, but like instances of the older bottles with Mooncat, still the same shape as what they are now, but like before Mooncat addressed this and fixed this and gave better bottles, people would just like have their bottles out and doing their nails, and the bottle would like crack. So I don't know specifically if the 2 Mooncat bottles from this transaction were of the older variety, but I'm just saying that if I were the seller, I personally would have done better packaging to wrap them up in bubble wrap. Okay, now moving on to the buyer. I have got to say that what they did in terms of putting someone's personal information out there is absolutely wrong. And this is on Reddit, where people are communicating and doing transactions behind usernames. I think it's different when, like, if you're on Facebook and you're in the indie polish buyer beware group, and when people are doing nail polish transactions on Facebook, you're doing so with your real name already associated with it. So if it turns out that, like, if I am doing a transaction with John Doe and John Doe is being really sketchy or did something that I think the community needs to know about, it's okay for me in that case to say John Doe, because that is the name that's being used in the context of Facebook. But what is not okay is for somebody to dox someone on Reddit like that, and to do so in a way where, like, there's just so many levels of wrong on this that I just am struggling to figure out where to even begin with this. The fact that they had not even opened the box to look and see what was in there, and that they immediately jumped to opening a dispute and doxing the person. Okay, I'm getting a little heated. So, with all of that being said, let me connect this back to where I started with the concept of if you see something, say something. In this video, I've been talking a lot about different things to look out for from potential buyers, potential sellers, and so on, and listing some of the red flags that are out there that you could see. But y'all, in this case, that seller, when that seller had the transaction with that buyer for those 2 Mooncat polishes, there's no way that that seller would have known or could have known that that buyer would have then been someone who would not even open the box that was sent to them, and that they would jump to the conclusion of doxing them. There's just no way that they could have known that, you know. I just and that's where these kinds of transactions can be tough, because, you know, as a buyer, as a seller, you can look out for all the warning signs. You can do everything right, but still end up on the wrong end with someone who's going to do that. And so this is why what I'm saying, if you see something, say something. And in that thread, I was one of the people who said, yeah, in my opinion, it's not okay that this buyer just doxed this seller without even opening the box. And even if they had opened the box, like, no. And other people spoke up too. Other people, like, the comments kept coming in. And because other people in the community were using their voices to say something about that situation, that was helping the seller to get the support that I'm sure they needed to know that they were in the right here, and that it was not okay that the buyer had done that. And because none of us can know for sure with some of these transactions that someone's going to do that, I feel that it's up to us as members of this nail polish community to look out for each other and to use our voices to say something when we see that something is wrong. Let me end this video on a positive note now that we have said all that. Okay, so thank you all again for letting me know that having a nail polish destashing 201 video would be helpful. It really, I would say, was helpful for also me to kind of pause and take inventory in more ways than one and think, like, what are the nuances of this activity that is such a core part of being in the nail polish community. Like I said in the first video, I don't recall ever coming across like a single source of truth or single source of opinion of a guide that could help a newcomer to understand these things. And so I think that for me, especially, like, as you all have seen throughout my videos, you probably, if you didn't already know that I used to be a teacher, it probably makes a lot of sense now. This is part of who I am, and I've enjoyed using my love and passion of education and connecting that to how I'm choosing to show up and be part of the nail polish community. And so if there are any other like aspects of the nail polish community that you all feel that like you have been wondering about, that you have need some guidance on, and just like a complete overview, please let me know. I've got let's see, on my iPad, I keep a running list of upcoming video ideas that I have. And I have like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got 8 videos, topics lined up that I'm so excited to film. And if there are any others that you all have, let me know and I will gladly add them to this list. I really hope that this information has been helpful for you all to get a better sense of what to look out for when it comes to doing nail polish destashing. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed whatever beverage you chose to sit down with for this video. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Bye.